Senior U.S. officials are now privately admitting that they don't expect a Gaza ceasefire deal to be secured by the time President Biden, his term, comes to an end. According to a report from the Wall Street Journal, the administration won't stop its pursuit of an agreement, seeing it as the only way to end the war in Gaza and stop a rapidly escalating conflict between Israel and Lebanese Hezbollah. But a number of top-level officials in the White House, State Department, and Pentagon argue the warring parties won't agree to the current framework. One of the U.S. officials said, "No deal is imminent. I'm not sure it ever gets done." These officials apparently cited two main reasons for why they're not optimistic a deal will get done soon. The ratio of Palestinian prisoners that Israel must release to bring Hamas-held hostages home was a major sticking point, and the two-day attack on Hezbollah with explosive pagers and walkie-talkies, followed by Israeli airstrikes, has made the possibility of all-out war much more likely, complicating diplomacy with Hamas. An official from an Arab country said shortly after those attacks in Lebanon, "There's no chance of it happening. Everyone is in a wait-and-see mode until after the election. The outcome will determine what can happen in the next administration." The Wall Street Journal also reports another problem is that according to Biden administration officials, Hamas makes demands and then refuses to say yes after the US and Israel accept them. Critics have also accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of sabotaging the process, partly in an effort to appease the hard right flank of his governing coalition. And we're going to get to more of that proof in a bit. But Cenk, what do you think of these talks stalling and potentially no progress being made until after Biden leaves office?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. Number one, earlier in the week, we told you that the pager attack was basically the thing that was Israel saying the peace talks are over, we're going to war. And this Wall Street Journal report confirms that. So the ceasefire talks are dead, just like I told you earlier in the week. The pager attack was the pivotal moment where basically Netanyahu said, we're not doing the deal at all. Instead, we're going to just keep attacking and attacking and attacking. And they attacked again today, killing another 12 in Lebanon. I mean, Israel is already obliterating Lebanon. They've attacked now countless times. So you say, oh, well, Hezbollah has also fired rockets. That's definitely true. Almost not, one rocket has landed in like 11 months, as far as we can tell. That killed people. So Hezbollah's attacks, look, let me put it to you this way. Both Wall Street Journal and New York Times say that before, both Hezbollah and Israel's attacks to one another was a quote, a low level conflict, okay? Now they're saying this is going to all out war. You see the difference, low level conflict, all out war. And who made that decision? It is exceedingly clear that Israel made that decision. Now, there's a little bit of spin you saw there in the beginning with the US officials now acknowledging it's basically over. Everybody's going to war. It was Hamas's fault because of the prisoner swap ratio. Look, could it have been Hamas's fault? Of course, they're a terrorist organization. Of course it could have been their fault. It's their fault that they took the hostages in the first place and did October 7th, etc. But this is the first I'm seeing. I might have missed it, to be fair. I haven't read every single article, but this is the first I'm seeing of a prisoner swap ratio demand of Hamas being the stumbling block. Every other report on this said that the major stumbling block was that Israel moved the goalposts. Hamas said yes on July 2nd, and then Israel said, oh, never mind. Then no, we don't want the deal that we were fine with before. In fact, as Jordan's going to tell you in a little bit, now Israeli press reporting, no, it was definitely Netanyahu. He changed the parameters a number of times. He did not give his negotiators any leeway to make a deal. In fact, his negotiators previously had said publicly, yeah, he basically wouldn't let us make the deal. He gave us no room to make a deal, even when Hamas agreed. So it is not all Israelis at all, but it is Netanyahu and his government. They have declared war here on Lebanon, but also in effect on Iran, because yes, it's true, Iran does fund and help Hezbollah, and so that's who Israel is trying to get us to get in a war with. Because Lebanon, Israel can handle on its own. Yeah, it'll be a giant mess. Yes, they'll slaughter a whole bunch of people. My guess is the Hezbollah reaction will be ineffectual, but maybe not. I don't know. As I've said, when you get this arrogant and think you can't be hit, sometimes you're wrong. But Iran is a significant military. For that, they're going to need the US to do their dirty work. And that's what this is leading up to. So we're here pretty much in the worst case scenario. Maz.
Yeah, this is very heartbreaking to watch as more people die in Gaza, as the hostages don't come home. And there was a moment early on when they did do that prisoner swap and they did the ceasefire where I thought, and I think a lot of people were optimistic that, they'll just keep repeating this and they will get to a point where there no more innocent Palestinians are going to die in Gaza and the hostages will return home. But we see, as you said, politics and power take precedence here, and you've got Netanyahu, who wants to stay in power, who wants to please and appease the far right members of his government, and Hamas as well. I mean, I assume at some point when this is over, hopefully, that the Palestinians will hold Hamas accountable to some extent for all this damage that's come down, all this, I should say, terror that's come down on them. So really in the middle of it all, it's very heartbreaking and it's very scary because, as you said, it just seems to keep escalating. And, ultimately one would think, as some people have criticized the Biden administration, they say, well, why can't they stop sending arms to Israel? Why can't they stop supporting Israel? You would think that the United States would use some of its clout to actually, pull them in a little bit. But obviously this administration is not. And if Trump were to win, he would not. So really, I don't know. I'm kind of hopeless at this point in terms of a solution. And again, by the way, we also don't know what effect it's going to have on the U.S. elections. That's the other thing. Imagine a world in which an actual ceasefire and return of hostages were to happen before the election. I mean, that would probably benefit Kamala Harris a lot because then the Biden administration had pulled it off, and yet we think that probably Bibi would like to have Trump in power. So maybe Trump. So there was a report a while back that Trump had contacted Bibi and said, "Don't come up with a deal." And I don't know if that was corroborated or not, but there was a reporter who was reporting that. So I believe that as well. So it's just it's very heartbreaking for the victims that we see in this war and what we're going to see more of.
So, of course, U.S. media is spinning these negotiations and what is stalling them in favor of Netanyahu and Israel. And the Wall Street Journal largely lays the blame at the feet of Hamas. But new reporting from Israeli outlet Channel 12 confirms what we already knew, that Netanyahu has been doing everything in his power to delay reaching a hostage deal. Their investigation included never-before-seen documents and previously unheard conversations. They found that behind the scenes, Israel procrastinated when it came to conducting the talks, and even when it was clear that Hamas was interested in a deal, the political echelon did not send a delegation to the talks as soon as possible. Netanyahu walked back several promises he made, including an agreement to end the war, and invented new non-starters that were previously never mentioned. He changed his mind, he denied, and he shifted blame to anyone he possibly could. Cenk, this does not sound like somebody who is serious about negotiating.
Yeah, that's the Israeli press there. And so it's pretty clear that Netanyahu didn't want this deal. And besides which, look, guys, this was never complicated. We told you from the get-go, the minute Ben-Gvir and Smotrich said, we will leave the cabinet if you do a ceasefire deal, it was over. Because if they leave the cabinet, they go to an election. That's the way that the system works in Israel. Netanyahu is now, I think, at 72-28, if I remember the last poll right, meaning he has no chance of winning the election. He would be out of power. He'd be out of power for good. He has a corruption trial that is potentially upcoming. He might literally go to jail if he did a ceasefire deal. So guys like Netanyahu are power-hungry egomaniacs. And it's not because he's the leader of Israel, it's because there are leaders in almost all countries that are like this. The Dick Cheneys, the Trumps, the Dutertes, the Viktor Orbans, the Vladimir Putins, etc. So, and Netanyahu is one of them, and he's one of the worst. And so he is starting any and all wars and preventing peace for his own personal gain. That is why even the people of Israel that actually don't really disagree with what's happening in Gaza too much, according to the polling, but even they are saying, no, this is outrageous and we hate this guy. And by the way, he had intelligence that October 7th was gonna happen and he let it happen. So whether he made that active decision or was incredibly incompetent in letting it happen, that's another reason why the population in Israel hates him as well. So congratulations, Netanyahu. You've united the whole world in hating you. But except for 3 of the most important people, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump all still love Netanyahu. And they will all do whatever Netanyahu commands of them. And there is no other way to spin this. I don't care what any Democrat says or what anybody in the establishment says. Joe Biden is a historic failure on this issue. And all he had to do was use his leverage. He has $26 billion worth of leverage. If he threatened it, we could have gotten a ceasefire deal, and everyone knows that. No one says, oh no, Cenk, if Israel doesn't care about the $26 billion, that wouldn't have made a difference. No one in their right mind believes that. Joe Biden could end it today. It's not even over. He could say, that's it, I'm pulling the funding because it was Netanyahu who broke the ceasefire deal or chose not to do it. But Biden is choosing to let this giant war in the Middle East happen and potentially cost his own party the election just because he says, oh, I serve Netanyahu. I don't serve America, I serve Netanyahu. If Netanyahu says war, then Joe Biden says war. He is a historic failure. So it's definitely on Netanyahu, but it is an enormous part of the fault here lies with President Joe Biden. So last things here is unfortunately now stories confirmed by the New York Times of the IDF throwing Palestinians off of rooftops. They have become what they most feared and loathed. So, oh, the terrible terrorists are doing rape and throwing people off of rooftops and killing civilians. Now the IDF has done all of them. And when it comes to death and killing civilians, they've killed so much more civilians than Hamas and Hezbollah combined, times 30. And if you're still saying, I don't care about Palestinian lives, they can kill 30, 50, 300 times more. But since they're Israel, they are not terrorists. When they do the same exact thing 30 times worse than the people we do call terrorists. So make up your mind on who's a terrorist. But right now, the terrorist named Netanyahu, I've made up my mind. He's definitely a terrorist by any definition. And he's now starting a giant war in the Middle East. And if we fight it for him and we finance that, we're out of our minds. America has to say, not just for the sake of the US and not just for the sake of the Palestinians, but also as a good friend for the sake of Israel. We have to draw a line and say, no, you will not get your own country, which is supposed to be a safe haven for Jews in the world, into a giant war in the Middle East where we don't know how many people are going to be harmed, including Israelis. But Joe Biden is so pathetically weak and so corrupt that he will never do that. Instead, he'll say, where's the check? Where's the check? Oh, AIPAC's given me over $11 million. That's too many bribes. So I'm gonna let Netanyahu do whatever he wants. And finally, guys, this is the most heartbreaking part. I mean, so much of this is heartbreaking. So many people are going to die. But if you're being realistic, and I'm afraid of saying it out loud, but that probably means that the hostages are gonna be killed because they've given up on the ceasefire deal. So they're gonna go to a giant war. Right now, Israel is bombing Lebanon as we speak. They've got ground troops on the border. They say we're not going to go in yet, but they've chosen war. So if I'm one of the family members of those hostages, the rage I would have would be untold, untold. You want to get mad at Hamas, that makes perfect sense. They took the hostages in the first place, and at some point, unfortunately, they haven't killed them yet. They haven't killed all of them yet, and I hope they never do. I hope they never do. Please, God, don't let them do that. But Netanyahu looks like he's signed their death warrant. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.